The family of Simone Jasmine, better known as the Queen of the South, has rubbished claims that she was involved in murder or attempted murder. Jasmine's believed to have led a ruthless drug gang in Wentworth, Durban.
It's the 28th of October, 2020. Simone Jasmine is walking towards an Uber taxi waiting for her a few yards away. She enters the vehicle, but before the driver can move, the passenger door is opened for a second time. And before Simone can react, all hell breaks loose. Her worst nightmare had just been realized. This is the story of the hit that took out one of the biggest female drug lords in Durban, South Africa. Jasmine's story starts in Wentworth, a suburb in Durban. Her particular area is along Lansdowne Road in a block of flats called the Barracks. The young lady quickly starts to recognize how things work within the streets, and she starts to get familiar with individuals connected to gangs in her community. Most of the hoods in Durban are dominated by these street gangs, and they tend to influence youngsters into this vicious cycle.
What do we do? What went so wrong? We're dying. Our children are dying. It says that the children will bury their parents, but we're burying our children. Why must it go on?
Jasmine's first encounter with the underworld comes through a relationship with one of the men affiliated with a well-known local gang within the area. The man sells the product for the gang, and he starts to teach the young lady the tactics of the trade. But their relationship is cut short when her partner is shot by a rival gang, and this awakes a different beast in Jasmine. She decides to take over the trade completely. She not only takes over the street corner he had been selling on, she decides to create her own gang named the Cartel, cutting ties with the one the partner was working for. She no longer wants to work for anyone but herself, and this is bound to attract enemies. You see, the death of her partner made Jasmine ruthless. She starts to take over all the selling points around her area. Rival gangs are now being taken out on sight, with the Cartel being the new authority in the Barracks. Most of her inspiration is from the South American show The Queen of the South. Everything from the name of her gang to how she moves is tailored on the main character of the show, but the only difference is that her dance with the underworld is in real life. She now has full control of Lansdowne Road in Wentworth, and her drug operations are generating 200,000 rand a week. But Jasmine is not satisfied by just being local, as she has big ambitions to create a vast distribution network and become a wholesaler for all the gangs in Durban. She decides to aggressively expand towards different areas including Lamontville, Umlotsi, and Kwamashu. This new expansion attracts unfamiliar competition, and in this world, competition means deadly ops. Her expansion into Umlotsi leads to several clashes with prominent taxi bosses. They eventually settle their differences and decide to accept Jasmine as their new supplier in Umlotsi, but the peace does not last long. It's now a few days after the peace talks in Umlotsi. One of the leaders of the cartel is about to deliver a drop to the Umlotsi group when a disagreement occurs. Guns are drawn out, and the two parties exchange gunfire, leading to the death of the man representing the Umlotsi group. The death of the man reignites the war, and the taxi bosses are quick to retaliate. A hitman is sent to the barracks with an AK-47, and he shoots out the flats where Simone Jasmine lives. But the queen is not around at this time, so she survives the attempt on her life. She now knows the prize on her head, and this makes her more cautious. Jasmine has different ops from every direction, and this leads to constant shootouts within the barracks. This also attracts the KwaZulu-Natal anti-gang unit, who are now laser-focused on Simone Jasmine and her gang. But the queen now has very deep pockets due to a flourishing drug empire, and she decides to bribe some of the officers at Wentworth police station. But what she doesn't know is that the KwaZulu-Natal anti-gang unit has been investigating these corrupt officers. They waste no time raiding the station and make arrests. It's now exactly 1 week after the raid at Wentworth police station. Jasmine and her crew are preparing for their next shipment when one of the group hears uncertain movements outside. The man stands up and herds to investigate, and before he gets to the door, the frames blast into pieces with men in tactical gear entering, the space guns drawn. They all lay flat on their stomachs, realizing the severity of the situation. The anti-gang unit had decided to take the operation down, and Jasmine knew it was nearly game over as she lay on the floor with army-grade weapons pointed at her head. They are all held on charges of murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. But Jasmine does not stay long as she gets released on bail. This sudden release raises suspicions among her fellow gang members. They are now puzzled on why she was the only one to get bail. The lady now has enemies within her gang and every direction she looks. Something is bound to give, and the queen knows this. She starts to move extra precautious. She no longer uses her vehicles to travel, and she gets friends and family to request Uber taxis for her when traveling. It's now the 28th of October, 2020. Jasmine decides to ask one of her relatives to request an Uber for her. She is to be picked up on Marine Drive in Wentworth. She waits for the confirmation of the ride before walking towards the location. Right before entering the vehicle, she notices another car passing, but the driver's voice asking her to confirm her identity shifts her attention. She tries to show him the screenshot of the details, but before he can look back, the passenger door is suddenly opened and a man carrying a firearm aims it straight at Jasmine. 5 shots ring through the air, followed by a complete silence. The hitman jumps into the getaway car and speeds off the scene. The Queen of the South had just been caught lacking, and the story of one of the biggest female drug lords ends in the most brutal way possible. Rumors start to circulate on whom might be responsible for taking out the Queen of the Barracks. The taxi bosses from Umlotsi had a hit on her head. The local gangs in her area were laser-focused on taking her out. And finally, her internal clashes with some of the members of her gang meant no one was to be trusted. But the death of the Queen only intensifies the war to a whole new level. Subscribe and turn on notification for the next chapter on the gang wars of Durban.
A send-off fit for a queen. Friends and family of the late Simone Jasmine gathered on Marine Drive, the Bluff, where a fancy motorcade made its way into her home for a final goodbye. Jasmine was arrested in September along with some of her alleged gang members on charges of murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. She was out on bail when she was killed.